Good afternoon / evening, everybody. It is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV. If you're watching on YouTube, it's Agenda Free TV too. And we are here to bring you our live news roundup of the latest headlines. And we're going to be taking your comments on the air as we do here in our interactive coverage. So you can write to me during the broadcast. At Lookner on Twitter is where you can reach me. At Lookner on Twitter. And thanks so much to all of our moderators in our various chat rooms. I really appreciate it, moderators. Thank you for being there. And I hope everybody's having a good 2021. So I actually want to start with some I'm not going to spend, I don't know if I'm going to spend any time. I'm certainly not going to spend a lot of time covering like the Trump phone call stuff because there's a million other places covering it. So I certainly don't want to do that first. So maybe we'll talk about it later. I do want to talk about first, though, some other things that I saw. Actually, I think this is really important. And I haven't heard about much today because everybody's been focusing on the Trump stuff. But this is this headline here. U.S. officials consider half doses of Moderna's vaccine to give more people at least some immunity. This is from the New York Times. This is a top official at Operation Warp Speed bringing up the idea of giving a half dose of the vaccine. Now, you might wonder, why would they do that? Well, to me, this is something you only consider doing if you're extremely frightened about what's going to happen. If you think that there's not enough vaccine to go around, and we're going to face and it's really urgent because it's going to be a very problematic situation. When they do the tests, the clinical tests on the Moderna vaccine were not for a half dose. So regardless of whether it might work in some sense, to me, this is a sign of how basically how scared the people who are running the country's vaccine rollout are about what's coming. And I think it makes sense that they're scared because the numbers of people getting vaccinated are quite small right now. There's not that much vaccine coming down the road in the near future. And this new strain is going crazy in the UK, and that strain has already been detected in several US states. So, I mean, unless I'm missing something, I'm fully anticipating the numbers of the cases and the hospitalizations and blah, blah, blah to rise in the US like they've done in the UK, because the UK has this new strain that's prominent in the UK has resulted in their cases and hospitalizations there have been taking off, even though in the UK, a lot of the country has been on a strong lockdown for weeks. And a lot of the restrictions in the UK are way more than the US has had recently. But in spite of that, in the UK, they're seeing unprecedented numbers of people getting the virus, people being hospitalized with the virus, and their strongest measures are not working because this new variant appears to be spreading that much faster. In the UK, they're talking about a tier 5. They have 4 tiers of regulations. Tier 4 is the strongest tier. Now they're talking about a tier 5 because of the new variant. So given that this variant is now in the US, it just stands to reason that you're going to see an increase in transmission in the US from this new variant, unless for some reason it doesn't spread here like it spreads in the UK. I have to imagine it will. So I'm guessing that's why they're so worried enough to consider half doses of the Moderna vaccine, half doses. So again, this to me, regardless of, well, will it work, or how well it will work, or will it happen, or blah, blah, blah. Just the fact this is being considered by, according to the New York Times, a top official of Operation Warp Speed. You don't consider something like this unless you think it's an emergency. So this is bad. This is really bad. In the same way that it's bad that in the UK they are now planning on giving more people one dose, on like basically getting as many people one dose as possible and postponing people getting their second dose. That's not how the vaccines were tested, but they're just so desperate over there because this new strain is going crazy. Now, but this is the first mention I've seen, the UK strategy of giving people one dose, giving more people one dose and then delaying the second dose. But this is the first I've seen of this, half doses. All right, let's look at the article a little bit. But I do want to, I just think this is. I saw this, I was like, wow. Hey, by the way, thank you for your support, Christina Kirshner and Queen of the South. I appreciate that. And Millie Medina. Thank you, Millie Medina, for your support. Millie Medina, Queen of the South, and Christina Kirshner. Thank you. Chris BR says half is really desperate. History Underfoot says half dose, but the rate of inoculation is going so slowly here in the U.S. Yeah, I mean, I think roughly around 5 million people about 4 million people have gotten their first dose in the U.S. The government was hoping for 20 million people by December 31st. So again, there's 340 million people in the country. And it's just, there's, like a month ago, I was seeing optimistic projections of, by the end of March, like 100 million people getting it in the U.S., which would still be less than a third of the country. I don't even know that that's going to happen now. Tom Lavelle says the logic is half dose is better than no dose. Well, I think strictly speaking, the logic would be half dose to twice as many people. Yeah, is like we're better off with a half dose for twice as many people than a full dose to half the amount of people. You know what I'm saying? However you actually say it. Navia says they are desperate. Right, Mr. Coldwater Canyon, the new UK strain is not believed to be more deadly, it just spreads faster. There's a new South Africa strain, which that might be more harmful to people. It's not clear. We'll talk about what's specifically going on in the UK after this. Jeff Haas says they should follow what the trials did, don't go rogue. There's been a bunch of controversy in the UK because they're talking about, in certain situations, giving people a different vaccine for their second dose than they got for their first dose. Now, the government says they'll only do that in rare situations, but that's not something that's been tested as well. Mr. KD1R says half will do fine. Well, let's read a little of the article, and then we'll talk more about the comments. Okay. R.W. Bill says, why not give twice as many people 80% coverage? Smart move. Let's see what this article says. A top official of Operation Warp Speed, this is from the New York Times. A top official of Operation Warp Speed floated a new idea on Sunday for stretching the limited number of COVID vaccine doses in the United States, having the dose of each shot of Moderna's vaccine to potentially double the number of people who could receive it. Data from Moderna's clinical trials demonstrated that people between the ages of 18 and 55, did they not test it on old people? I don't know, who received 50 microgram doses showed an identical immune response to the standard of 200 microgram doses, said the official, Dr. Monsef Slawi. I don't know that, but I don't, again, what I'd be interested in, well, maybe there's something in, I don't remember what's in this article, but let's read the article. But I don't know if the trial was not designed to test a half dose, as far as I'm aware. Dr. Slawi said Operation Warp Speed was in discussions with the FDA and the pharmaceutical company Moderna over implementing the half-dose regimen. Moderna did not respond immediately to a request for comment. So Moderna isn't saying anything about this right now. I mean, I'd be interested to know what Moderna ends up saying about this. Each vaccine would still be delivered in 2 on-schedule doses 4 weeks apart, Dr. Slaoui said on Face the Nation. He said it would be up to the FDA to decide whether to move forward with the plan. Dr. Slaoui was asked whether the U.S. would follow Britain's lead on another tactic for getting shots to more people, delaying second doses of newly authorized vaccines to immunize a larger swath of the population. There is little or no data on dose delays, Dr. Slaoui said, but injecting half the volume might constitute a more responsible approach that will be based on facts and data to immunize more people. Natalie Dean, a biostatistician at the University of Florida, agreed there might be more data to support a vaccine strategy that relied on half doses rather than delayed doses. There is a path forward if you can show that 2 lower doses yield a similar immune response, Dr. Dean said. As caseloads continue to surge upward around the globe and concerns mount over a new and potentially more transmissible variant of the coronavirus, everyone is looking for solutions right now because there's an urgent need for more doses, Dr. Dean added, but the dust has not settled on the best way to achieve this. John Moore, a vaccine expert at Cornell University, pointed out the approach of using half doses wouldn't necessarily work for all vaccines. Injections are already doled out in very small volumes, and some might be harder to have than others, he noted. While Dr. Moore agreed that halving doses has more scientific backing than dose delays, he noted, "This is not something I would want to see done unless it were absolutely necessary." So, again, just the fact this is being considered, a top official of Operation Warp Speed, which is I believe, the federal government agency in charge of the vaccination, Operation Warp Speed, public-private partnership initiated by the U.S. government to facilitate and accelerate the development, manufacturing, and distribution of vaccines. Top official at Operation Warp Speed says he wants, they are asking the FDA. Operation Warp Speed is in discussions with the FDA and the pharmaceutical company Moderna over doing half doses. Now, by the way, so what if I'm sitting here? What if I'm sitting here and I'm expecting to get a full dose, and they call me and they send me an email and they say, "Steve, you're up. You're scheduled for next week to get your vaccine. Oh, by the way, you're getting a half dose." I mean, on the one hand, I think I'd be happier getting a half dose than nothing at all. On the other hand, I think part of me would be upset I wasn't getting a full dose. But again, they wouldn't be doing this. They would not be, it's extraordinary that this is being discussed. It's extraordinary this is being discussed. This was not being discussed 2 weeks ago. Publicly, it was not being discussed even a few days ago. They are discussing this because they are freaking out over what's going to happen. I think they're discussing this. They're clearly discussing it because they're freaking out, okay? They're really scared. You don't discuss this stuff unless you're really scared. Personally, I think they are freaking out over the new strain, what it's doing in the UK, this new strain that has been now clearly in the US as well, although maybe it hasn't spread as much as it has in the UK yet. But I think they're freaking out over the new strain, and they're looking at the new strain numbers in the UK, and then they're looking at how much vaccine is coming available in the next few months, and they're saying this is going to be disastrous. So what can we do? You don't do this unless you're just utterly desperate. And it just shows they're utterly desperate. I mean, why half doses? Half doses? So, and again, I'm not saying it won't work to a degree. Maybe it'll turn out. It might. I'm not talking about the science, right? I'm not talking about the science. Maybe it'll turn out that you get most of the protection from a half dose. I don't know. This is not a discussion of the science, but it's just a discussion of what it means that they're talking about this publicly. All right, let me read some more comments from you. Hey, thanks real quick. Thank you to Diane Pickett. I appreciate that, Diane. Thank you. And thank you also, Weston Jossie. Happy New Year. Weston says the audio recording was a real hoot. Thank you, Weston. Thank you, Saranya C., for your support. Saranya says, people over 55 are dying in Southern California. Why don't they do a third phase trial to see if the alternate dosing schedules work for Oxford, Vax, and Moderna? Cases and deaths are high here in SC and LA County. So we'll talk about LA County more because the things are really bad there. In Southern California generally. But, I'm guessing trials, well, a couple things. Trials take a while, right? And you have to get enough people to do it. So I'm sure that there would be that companies are and governments are looking into testing the whole. Here's the problem. It takes a while to do a test. It takes a while to get enough people who want to do the test, and I assume if you were going to do some kind of, do it the right way, some kind of organized, proper test of whether half doses work, it would take you months and months. We don't have months and months, right? The point of doing this is to deal with the next few months. So, you can't, these tests take a while. You would have to find the people to do it. Also, let me say this. Here's another problem, an obvious problem. If you're going to do tests, you'd have to divert the vaccine to the tests, right? Because every vaccine dose you use on a test, you can't, you're giving it to somebody, but you're not giving it to somebody else. So my point is just that it's really at this point, my guess is it's impractical to do some large scale test of this, right? Just because by the time it's all done, it would be, you'll be past the point in time that you were most worried about. Eventually, like a year from now, there's going to be a lot more vaccine out there. But now this is not to mean they won't do some kind of test. I'm just saying, I'm guessing whatever they need to do to research this stuff. And look, if they give half doses to people, they'll certainly keep up with them and see what the results are. So the test might actually be just observing. If they decide to do it, they'll see what happens. Yeah, you can't, it's not you can't just do a test in a few days or something. You're talking about months to do a test about how a vaccine works. But certainly if you have half doses here, or in the UK if they start giving more people one dose, in the UK the plan is to delay people's second dose so you can give more people the first dose. So certainly it'll be, if that happens in the UK, it'll be observed what happens, and they'll look at people and they'll see what the results are. Thank you, Saranya. I appreciate your support. Thank you also, Holly Courtney. Thank you, Holly Courtney. I appreciate that. Thank you. RW Bill says Moderna did test 2,000 on a single dose. I'm not aware, again, as I understand it, the tests that Moderna and Pfizer did and that Oxford did were for full doses, a specified amount of time apart, 2 doses. Now, there might be other data that was gathered in those tests, but as far as I'm aware, the focus of those tests were to test full doses. For Pfizer, I think it was 21 days, and Moderna, I think it was 21 days or something. That was the test. The test was not to. So there might be other data they picked up in that test, but having some data about some other conditions is not the same as doing a rigorous test for that specific dosage under those conditions and that specific dosage timetable. It literally, look, I just read you the article. It says in the article you have multiple experts saying, we don't have complete data on this. Idea to Go says, are they even able to get all the available doses into arms? If not, then having won't help. Oh, first of all, let me say this. RW Bill says, I'm causing panic. How am I causing panic? So how am I causing panic on this? I just read you that the story is true. I literally read you an article where the whole article, including multiple experts, say it's incomplete data on this, right? So how am I causing panic? It doesn't even make sense. I'm telling you the truth. Do you think that Operation Warp Speed wants to give people half doses? It's just ridiculous to say I'm causing panic. That is ridiculous. That's a ridiculous comment. It's ridiculous. That's like when people in February telling me I was causing panic about the fake virus. Come on. R.W. Bill, you know better. And look, if R.W. Bill, if you actually listen to what I said repeatedly, I have repeatedly said this is not about the science. I have said that. I was saying my point here. I said, I don't know if it works. I don't know if it doesn't work. The data seems to be incomplete. I didn't say it wouldn't work. What I'm saying is they don't consider giving people half doses unless they think this is a real emergency. I don't think that's a very controversial statement. I certainly don't think it's causing panic. But Idea to Go says, are they even able to get all the available doses into people's arms? All right, so look, yeah, I mean, the assumption here, obviously, like right now it seems like there's issues in the U.S., even getting the vaccine that exists into people's arms, right? Because there's more vaccine that's been sent out to states, a lot more than actually has been given to people. But obviously, you do this assuming that you're going to catch up on all that, right? If there's lots of extra vaccine lying around anyway that hasn't been given to people, this isn't necessarily going to help you. So the assumption is that they'll iron out those difficulties and have a system where whatever is getting put out there is being given to people, and then you could, in theory, double it if you're giving people half doses. You can write to me on Twitter, at Lookner on Twitter. I want to get you some more on this. Politico has an article. Feds may cut Moderna vaccine doses in half so more people get shots. Warp Speed Advisor says, the federal government is in talks with Moderna, who has not made a statement on this, as far as I'm aware, about giving half the recommended dose of the company's COVID shot to speed up immunization efforts. The head of the vaccine rollout said Sunday. Okay. The head of the vaccine rollout said there is evidence that 2 half doses in people between the ages of 18 and 55 gives identical immune response to the recommended 1 full dose, but said final decision will rest with the FDA. His remarks came amid intensifying concern that the COVID vaccine distribution has been slower than expected. So far, just over 4 million Americans have received their first of 2 doses, and another 13 million doses have been delivered to states. Earlier Sunday, top federal infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci cautioned that the government shouldn't deviate from the doses and schedules used in clinical trials on the vaccines, adding that distribution efforts need to be more efficient. We know what the science tells us, he said, without directly addressing the suggestion of half doses. So my feeling is, let's do it the way the clinical trials have instructed us to do it. So Dr. Fauci, it sounds like, is not cool with giving people half doses. As we said, the UK is shifting its guidance to delay second doses. The UK last week shifted its guidance to get as many people as possible their first dose while potentially delaying the second dose, sparking concern among scientists who say there is no evidence to suggest the vaccine is effective without completing the full 2-dose regimen. Slaoui balked at the idea of taking a similar approach in the U.S., saying it would not be responsible to give initial doses without ensuring people get their second dose without data to back it up. Yeah, so, look, it ultimately comes down to cost benefit, right? In the UK, they don't want to not give people a second dose, right? They don't want to delay the second dose. They're talking about delaying the second dose for a long time. I want to say maybe 12 weeks, where it's supposed to be like 3 weeks you get the second dose, just so they can give as many people the first dose as possible. But the reason they're going down that road in the UK is they just think it's such an emergency because of this new strain in the UK is spreading so much in spite of their, having these very strong restrictions now in the UK. It's still not tamping down the spread, and the hospitals get worse and worse in the UK. So they're only doing this thing in the UK where they're giving more people one dose and having you wait longer to get your second dose because they feel like the benefit outweighs the cost. They don't want to do it, but they just feel like we got to do it because we need the benefits in spite of the cost. So if the U.S., I don't think Operation Warp Speed wants to do this. I don't think the federal government wants to do this. I just think they're only proposing this because they're worried about what will happen if you don't do this. You don't propose this unless you think it's going to be a disaster if you just give everybody the full dose. So they think the benefits outweigh the cost. That's why they're proposing it. But they're only proposing it because they think there's huge costs to not doing it. Kelly is kind says rationing vaccines, that is where we're at. Jeff says this could lead to bigger problems later. Now maybe it'll work fine. I don't know. But I really think it would make sense that the fear that the U.S. officials are looking at what's going on in the U.K. and they're seeing how bad it's getting there and how bad it's gotten there, with the restrictions they have there, which are more, they have way more restrictions in the UK, and they've had way more restrictions in the UK the last several weeks than we generally have here in the US. But the virus is still taking off because it's the new strain. It spreads faster, it looks like. So I think the officials are looking at that and they're saying, oh my gosh, that's what's going to happen here. And in the US, in the UK too, but in the US, people just went home for Christmas. You had record-setting travel days, record amounts of air travelers, lots of people traveling for Christmas, going out for New Year's. So you're going to get that. Thank you, McNeo. McNeo's for your support. McNeo says, will the existing vaccine even work on the new strain? There's no evidence yet that it doesn't work on the new strain, and expert opinion seems to be that the vaccines will work on the new strain, although I believe that's being researched now. Thank you, Christina Kirshner. She says, I appreciate it, Christina. Christina says, we shouldn't, you have a valid point about half doses, not fear, but rational prudence. I'm just saying they're clearly worried. Debbie says it's a dilemma. It is. Because there's not enough vaccine and new strain. Fairy Goddess says, I'm sure they have data on lower doses. It seems like there's some data out there. Again, I'm not familiar with all the data. I'd kind of be interested. I sort of want to look. I have like a list of people I follow for virus stuff. I wonder if any of them are talking about the half doses stuff. Let me just see something here. Carl Zimmer who I follow for virus stuff, what did he say? He said the scientific advisor for Operation Warp Speed floated the idea today of cutting the Moderna doses in half from 200, blah, 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 blah. It appears he's relying on phase 2 trial results in which 200 people under 55 got half a dose and had comparable antibody responses to people who got 100 micrograms. That assumes that antibody levels are a correlate of protection. There's data from monkeys that this might be true, but nothing yet from people I've seen. I see. And there's the 200 people who got a half dose in the phase 2 study after running 30,000 person phase 3 trial. That's a pretty small hook to hang one's hat on. So what Carl Zimmer is saying, he's saying it looks like, if I understand this right, the data they're relying on is based on 200 people, which he says is a small number. And it's 200 people. I think he's saying it's phase 2 data, not phase 3, say, data. So you're not even, I think in phase 3 is where you actually see if people get sick or not. That's not phase 2. Let's see if I can find a description here. Cancer.org. Phase 2, does the treatment work? Is it better? That looks like different. See, what he's saying, Carl Zimmer is saying, is he's saying in phase 2, they measure, they look at the antibody response. And he says, though, that assumes that antibody levels are a correlate of protection. So phase 3 trials, I know for the vaccines, are where they actually look at whether people get sick. And so it looks like, again, he believes, by the way, he is a New York Times columnist, and he writes about a lot of science stuff. He believes that the data they're looking at is, data from a relatively small group of people, and it's not even data about whether they actually got sick. It's about their antibody response, but it's not clear to him that even that antibody levels are a correlate of protection. So, I mean, basically his point is that if this is the data they're relying on to support the half dose, plan, it's not very strong data. That's his basic point. And that there's not that much of it is what, there's just not that much of it, and it's not very strong data. This would not be giving a half dose to a lot of people and seeing if they get sick. That's not in the data. Elizabeth G says we don't know if people in phase 2 got sick. Yeah, it looks like the phase 2, according to him, was just to see what their antibody response was. That's what he's saying here. Let's see if I can find what anyone else says about this. Angela Rasmussen, who is like an expert on this kind of stuff, posted this today. She said, no efficacy data for half doses, though. So she's saying there's no actual data on where you give people half doses in a controlled experiment and you see if they get sick or not. Basically you see if the people with half doses get sick less than the people with no dose, with a placebo. She says no efficacy data for half doses. So it certainly seems, again, I'm not familiar with all the data, but it certainly seems like there isn't much data on this right now. Doesn't mean it wouldn't work or, that half doses don't provide a significant degree of immunity. It's just there's not a huge amount of data. But, it might be a case where you figure, well, let's try it because if we don't do something, it's going to be so bad. Nicole Wilson said, I would feel better with the UK's plan. Sharon says, it looks like they're going to find out if it works with real life. This is really big though. Like what if it's announced in like 3 days? Like, I feel like this has not really been like a big story today. Like, I think it should be. But what if it gets suddenly announced in 3 days? If in 3 days it's suddenly announced, okay, we're giving out in the US the Moderna vaccine, you only get a half dose. I think it'll be a huge deal. Because I think there'll be a bunch of people who say, I want the full dose. Okay. I want to talk about more about what's going on in the UK too. I want to read some more comments from you guys. At Lookner on Twitter. Aaron says, a couple months ago, they said the average citizen would not have access to the vaccines until April or later. That's true. How does this play into what's going on with half doses? Is the April target now pushed back? Is it a supply problem, just Moderna? It's not clear. So look, there were timelines put out there, estimated timelines in the U.S., and I'm sure in other countries too, like the U.K., about when people would get their vaccines. But remember, the original federal government target was 20 million people getting their first dose by December 31st. It was actually like 3 million, right? 4 million. So I don't know. It's not clear. No one knows what the schedule is going to be. All I can tell you is that the estimates I was seeing a month ago were for around like 100 million people to get the vaccine in the U.S. by the end of March. So my guess would be that given that things are slower now than anticipated, then that target wouldn't be reached. There's about 90 days from now till the end of March. We're certainly not vaccinating 1 million people a day. So that's what and that wouldn't even get you there. That would be, if you vaccinate 1 million people a day between now and the end of March, you get about 94 million people or something. So that's only, and even 100 million people would be about 30% of the country. So as to how much it gets pushed back, I don't know. I don't know how's the manufacturing going to go for this stuff. I don't know, how is the distribution going to go? Maybe it'll get figured out and it'll be a lot faster. Maybe, there's going to be a new presidential administration. I'm guessing you might see the Biden administration start being very proactive. In other countries, you have like in Israel, you have governments like building these huge vaccination centers. That ain't happening here. Would something like that start happening under it's a federal system, but maybe you'll see more federal government for support for that kind of thing. So I just don't know. It's just not clear. No one knows. But I'm not as someone who's not in one of the top couple tiers of people who are supposed to get this, I'm not assuming I'm going to get it until late this year. I'm not expecting to get it until late in 2021. Now, maybe if they do the half dose thing, it's different, but I don't know. I don't know. It's just we don't know how much vaccine is going to be produced, and how the distribution is going to go. History Underfoot says the distribution in the USA has been incompetent. What's a slowdown? You know, I've read some articles about this, and it's just there was an article about it in the Wall Street Journal that talked about different things, but it's not clear to me that I don't think it's just one thing. I mean, if you just think about the basics of this, right? So, hang on a second here. I mean, you have to hire and train people to give out the vaccines. You have to have facilities to do it at. You have to convince people to take it. I mean, there's been some places, like the governor of Ohio said recently that 60% of nursing home workers were refusing to take the vaccine in Ohio. So you have to have people willing to take it. And it's just, there's a lot of logistical stuff going on with this, and it's just starting now. Is this the article I was reading? This is an article in Wall Street Journal. That COVID vaccines slow rollout could portend more problems. Far fewer people have gotten shots than expected due to disorganization and conflicting priorities among states, counties, and hospitals. I don't have a simple answer for you, but I've read articles where they listed like a bunch of different reasons. Public health officials in states say uptake is lagging for several reasons, beginning with holiday seasons that have kept staff of hospitals and nursing homes away from work. They also note they are facing high percentages of people, including some healthcare workers, who are skeptical of taking the shots. Hospitals and other sites are staggering appointments to avoid pulling too many workers from caring for patients amid a nationwide surge in COVID cases. So you need staff to give these vaccines out. Administration of the vaccines also takes more time than a typical flu shot, particularly since they're being done in a socially distant way and may be preceded by a COVID test. In addition, people who receive vaccines are being monitored for at least 15 minutes in case of allergic reactions. Different state policies on giving out the vaccines and who gets them have led to confusion and shipment delays for hospitals. So there's various reasons I've seen cited, but it's going slowly in the U.S. Hello to our viewer, Arul, Mexico. All right, so I want to talk about what's going on in the UK. Hang on a second here. AC Life says, what is the use of giving someone 2 half doses of Moderna vaccine when the dosing schedule is only tested in younger people, not on groups with highest COVID death rates, which is people over 65 and those are 55. So what AC Life is talking about is, from what I can gather, from what we saw in the articles, what data there is on giving people half doses of the Moderna vaccine is data from giving people 18 to 55 it. Well, what you could do, though, is, you know, if there's a limited amount of vaccine, you could choose to give the half doses to the 18 to 55-year-olds, and that'll allow you to use, you know, you like, say you give half doses to 18 to 55-year-olds of Moderna, then maybe you save the Pfizer vaccine for the older people or something, you know? So it's if you can there's the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine. So if you were to give 18 to 55s half doses of the Moderna, in theory you might have more Pfizer left over to give to, say, older people, but I don't know what the plan is. Stuart Paul Newby's opinion is, if a half dose works, they never do it for the flu, MMR, smallpox, etc. Do it the way the company who made it said, following the science. No guessing. If not, lockdown to save lives from Stuart from Wakefield, UK. That's from Stuart. Okay. All right, let's talk about, so as I mentioned, I believe that this whole proposing half doses of the Moderna vaccine in the US, I think it's basically because of worries about the new strain, what's going on in the UK. So we should talk more about what's going on in the UK because it's really bad there. Hang on one second. Let me just need to fix something here. Hold on, folks. The places to reach me with your comments is at Lookner on Twitter. That's the best place to reach me. Give me 1 second here. I want to open up these chats too. I know a lot of other people are writing in too. Hey, thanks to our moderators, by the way. We got Mark Helton is there moderating. Thank you, Mark. Lynn G is there moderating. Thank you. Our Periscope moderators, thank you. Miss Misha is there. Miss Misha says, we're desperate for sure. Salvatore says, I wonder why is it only bad in the UK, this new strain? Well, we don't know. It could be very prevalent in a lot of other countries, but the UK is one of the only, most countries don't really do much testing as to what strain people have, including the US. So it's possible that the new strain is prevalent in a lot of other places too. We just don't know how prevalent because generally speaking, countries don't test much for what kind of strain people have if they test at all. But also it's possible that, in the US, I'm assuming that you will see numbers go up as there's been, in the UK, what's happened is they've had these, they've been under strong regulations the last few weeks, but the numbers still aren't coming down. And that's attributed to the new strain, which spreads faster. So my assumption would be is that in the US, as it got more prominent, you would see a bigger increase. But it can, difference, it can, if it's, it's just a virus doesn't occur, a virus strain doesn't occur equally around the world. It happens, the virus mutates in one place, the strain starts taking hold and spreading, but it would take time for it to make its way around the world if it was going to do that. And especially these days when when international travel is more limited, that's going to lengthen the amount of time it might take to move from country to country. Let's see. Hey, thanks to our Twitch moderators, RiffTrax and Skinny Survivor, and our Facebook moderators too. We've had Roxanne Betke moderating lately in Facebook. All right, here's what I would like to do. Here's what I would like to do. All right, next we're going to talk about what's going on in the UK now. It's really serious there what's going on in the UK. But I need a 1 minute break. Give me 1 minute. I'm coming right back in 1 minute, and then we'll. I should have said a minute. 1 minute, and then we will continue our coverage in 1 short minute. Okay, we're back. We are back. So I want to talk about how in the UK they're talking about tier 5. That's how bad it's getting there. Tier 5. Right now in the UK, tier 4 is the highest level of restrictions. But this new strain appears to spread significantly faster than previous strains. So even though so tier 4, their highest level of lockdown might not be enough in the UK to keep it from spreading and get it under control. You can see tier 5, that's from Sky News. What might change if tier 5 restrictions are introduced? More than 40 million people across England are living under tier 4 as fears grow over the spread of a mutant variant of the virus. The Prime Minister is facing pressure to limit social contact even further in those areas by closing educational settings, with most primary and secondary schools in England set to open this month. Boris Johnson has warned of tighter restrictions but has refused to be drawn on whether a so-called Tier 5 will be introduced. As the government's own scientific advisors have said, it's pretty clear we're going to need more restrictions. Sky News takes a look at what Tier 5 might look like. All primary and secondary schools could close. Scientists from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine have warned of large resurgences of coronavirus unless schools and universities are closed. The scientists said in a paper last month, our estimates suggest that control measures are unlikely to reduce the effective reproduction number R to less than 1 unless primary schools, secondary schools, and universities are also closed. So this is something because this is because this new strain spreads faster than previous strains. The government's advisory group, SAGE, which advises the government, has also said the R number could be kept below 1 if schools remain closed after the Christmas break. The R number is how many people on average a person who gets the virus gives it to, right? So if you get the virus, if the R number is 1, that means everybody who gets the virus on average gives it to one other person. You want the R number to be below 1 because if everybody's giving somebody on average if everybody's giving on average less than one person the virus, the number of overall people with it will shrink. If everybody on average is giving more than one person the virus, like 1.2 or 1.4 or whatever, then the overall number of people in the country with the virus actively is going to grow. The Prime Minister said, I'm not going to speculate now about what they would be, but I'm sure all our viewers and listeners will understand what the sort of things, clearly school closures, which we have had to do in March, is one of those things they might do in the country, like ordering all the schools to just close. Meeting others. People are currently allowed to meet one other person from another household outside under the current Tier 4 restrictions. Tier 5 restrictions could mean people are not allowed to meet up outside at all unless they are in one of their bubbles. There are support and childcare bubbles. Like unless it's somebody I guess you care for as a child or somebody who you need for support or something. However, people were allowed to meet one other person outside under the first national lockdown. The removal of support bubbles altogether would be seen as having a damaging effect on mental health. More shops may have to close. Retail stores regarded as being non-essential have had to close under Tier 4 restrictions. However, many businesses currently deemed essential under government guidelines may have to close if Tier 5 is introduced. That means off-licenses, builders, merchants, and garden centers could all have to shut their doors. I don't know what off-licenses are. That's a liquor store. Tier 4 restrictions allow members of the public to carry out an unlimited amount of exercise outside each day. If Tier 5 is introduced, it could mean people are restricted to only exercising outside once a day, as was the case during the first national lockdown. Communal worship could be banned. People are allowed to worship in groups under Tier 4 restrictions, but this could no longer be permitted if measures are tightened. Weddings are allowed to take place with up to 6 people in attendance in Tier 4, but they could be banned altogether in a Tier 5. Foreign travel could be completely banned. People living in Tier 4 areas are only allowed to travel abroad for work purposes. A tightening of measures to Tier 5 could ban people from traveling abroad altogether. So these are just, again, that's from Sky News. That's actually a good discussion of what Tier 5 might look like in the UK. But look, they don't want to do this. It's just even the Tier 4 is not working as well as they want it to with this new strain. Karen Brody says, I think a lot is being spread by kids and teens. So there is, if I'm remembering right, there's evidence that lately in the UK with this new strain, there's been more spread related to younger people than before. There's evidence suggesting that. Thank you, Miss Chief. Miss Chief says, does faster spread mean shorter incubation time or spreads faster among different demographics before? Basically, my understanding, Miss Chief, is that faster spread means it's just, not faster spread, it spreads easier. So more people, if people hang out in a group, for example, it's more likely that one person will give it to the other. It's not clear why that's the case, why it's easier for one person to get it from another. But basically it just means like when you have close contact with somebody, the likelihood is greater of you getting it from them if they have it. That's really what it means. It's not, I haven't really heard anything on the timing stuff. Maybe the timing changes too. The difference that I've heard is that it's just more likely if you're in an at-risk situation that you'll end up getting it from someone. But there might be other stuff about it. I just haven't seen that in my reading on this, I haven't seen that prominently discussed. Now, what that will mean is if the numbers will go up faster of how many people get it, but that doesn't mean that that will just happen if it's more likely for people to get it. Doesn't mean you're getting it faster. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't have the data on that. Salvatore says, wonder how did it get to a mutant strain? Viruses just naturally mutate all the time. That's just what they do. They replicate themselves, but there's often they make imperfect copies of themselves. The vast majority of the time, those mutations don't help the virus spread. But once in a while, it can be the case that the virus mutates in a way that actually helps it spread. Jeff Vegas thinks churches should be closed immediately. Pantefelder says, I hope the schools in the Netherlands will stay closed for some more weeks. I don't know with the Netherlands how prevalent the new strain is there. I mean, they announced a big lockdown a few weeks ago. This is from 3 weeks ago. Netherlands to go into tough 5-week lockdown over Christmas. Closure of all schools and shops for at least 5 weeks. But I don't believe this was, I think this was just done, I don't think this was necessarily done with the specific target in mind of the UK strain. I think it was just because they were having a lot more infections and stuff. Here, let me show you also. Write to me on Twitter @Lookner. Thank you, Roxanne Betke, for moderating in our Facebook chat. Thank you. Darren Thompson, who's in Canada, says, restrictions are working here. 6 weeks of heavy restrictions, code red we call it in Canada, cases finally dropping. Hold on a second here. Hang on. RiffTrax posted something about this. RiffTrax mentioned that there's a variant of concern article on Wikipedia. And it says, the increase in rate of infection is thought to be at least partly because of change N501Y inside the spike glycoprotein's receptor binding domain. I don't understand all of this. You can read more about that here. Here, the threat of national COVID lockdown looms again. This is UK. Shielding and school closures among tougher measures that could last until Easter and beyond. From the Telegraph. Boris Johnson has put the country on notice for a third national lockdown. Now, shielding, I forget what shielding is. Is that basically when you totally isolate people? Right? The CDC, the shielding approach aims to limit the number of severe cases by limiting contact between individuals at higher risk of developing severe disease, high risk, and the general population. So I guess like you would totally try to, like, for example, older people, you'd like try to totally isolate them. Yeah. High risk individuals, what is this? Shielding. High-risk individuals would be temporarily relocated to safe or green zones established at the household, neighborhood, camp, sector, or community level, depending on the context and setting. They would have minimal contact with family members and other low-risk residents. So I guess maybe like people would be brought food and stuff like that, you know? Karen Brody says it's isolating the vulnerable and elderly. England could be back in a national lockdown in the middle of the month, government sources suggested, says the Telegraph, prompting fears the country will be kept in a straitjacket until at least Easter. The Telegraph understands discussions about the return of shielding have already begun in the government, and further announcement of school closures could come as soon as this week. The Labour leader in the UK called for an immediate lockdown, saying the virus is clearly out of control. Government scientific advisors said tougher measures were needed. On Sunday, another 55,000 people tested positive and a further 454 died. The average daily case rate is now 10 times higher than at any point during the first wave last spring. Now they're testing more people, but it's still there's a record number of people hospitalized. There's some really bad stories about the situations with hospitals in the UK. I've been reading. Primary schools in some parts of the country are set to defy the government amid the rising cases and stay closed on tomorrow when they're supposed to open. The Prime Minister insisted schools are safe. Let's see here. Whitehall sources told The Telegraph discussions are underway about the return of shielding, telling vulnerable people to stay indoors, and whether that could be extended to people in specific age groups as the over 70s. And this is, again, I'm one of the reasons I'm focusing on this is when you see stories like this, we talked about this earlier, that in the U.S., the federal government is exploring and considering giving people only a half dose of the Moderna vaccine rather than a full dose to try to get it to more people. I think that's because they're worried about this new strain that's just going crazy in the UK. Seize the Day says UK hospitals are in bad shape, but also no staff. Right? Can have all the units you want, but no staff. Here, look. This was a good call. I saw this today, also from the Telegraph. Soaring number of patients left waiting outside hospitals and ambulances. Some patients are so unwell that hospital staff begin their treatment in the ambulance. Frontline paramedic says. There's just so many people in the hospital with COVID in the UK. It's causing all these issues. The number of patients left waiting outside hospitals and ambulances is soaring due to COVID infection control measures and rising hospital admissions, with paramedics warning emergency calls. Emergency calls are going unanswered. Like 911, but it's not 911 there. Patients waiting more than an hour to be handled to hospitals in England more than doubled in 2 weeks. This paramedics official said ambulances could be waiting 3 or more hours for a space to become available inside emergency departments. Some patients are so unwell that hospital staff are coming out to begin giving them treatment in the ambulance, the frontline paramedic said. They're effectively turning the ambulance into another treatment room because they don't have any space left. This is having a knock-on effect for patients making, I believe, is 999 like 911? Yeah, 999 is 911 in the UK. This is having a knock-on effect for patients making 999 emergency calls who are left waiting hours for a response, he said, adding, our radios are calling out for any ambulances that are available to deal with so many emergency calls, but there is no one left to send. Colleagues have told them in some cases there have been hundreds of emergency calls waiting for an ambulance to be dispatched. Some patients who are category 2, meaning that on average an ambulance should get to them within 18 minutes, are waiting upwards of 5 hours, he said. So look, this is pointing out that if you have, so many COVID patients, ambulances are having to wait with those patients outside hospitals. Those ambulances can't go to serve anybody else. So according to this article in the Telegraph, you're having people in the UK having these long waits to get an ambulance, even if it's not for COVID, or getting a long wait to even get their emergency call. I guess, is it... just people waiting hours just to get, an ambulance for anything. Even people in urgent situations. And I would not be surprised if U.S. government looks at that and they're saying that's going to happen here because of the new strain. And that's why they're thinking of things like this. Cutting the doses in half. But, that's like the idea is for people in the U.S., the idea would be is if you called 911 and you needed an ambulance and they said, well, it's going to be a few hours. So these are the kind of things that governments worry about. And that makes them try to figure out what can we do to keep this under control. All right, let me know your thoughts at Lookner on Twitter. Aries Pork, thank you, Aries Pork. Aries Pork says new variant may be in many states. Yeah, right now, I think it's been detected in 3 states in the U.S., but most people, the vast majority of the people in the U.S. do not get if they don't get their strain tested. It's not tested what strain they have. So it could be a lot more prevalent in the U.S. And at least in 2 of the states, maybe all 3 of the states in the U.S. where people have the new UK variant. I say UK variant because it's more prominent in the UK. But in at least 2 of the states, I know the people had no travel history, which means they got it from somebody else in the U.S. Mark Whirling thinks it will happen in the U.S. LJD says National Guard was called into Los Angeles. I read something, I think, about that. I'll have to look it up. Miss Sal said they had the Nightingale and don't have the staff to run it. Plus, all of the NHS staff off sick with COVID. It's a bad situation. Yeah, I've been seeing a bunch of stuff about, let me just see if I can find some of the other stuff I saw about it. This I saw, this is from John Byrne Murdoch, who's with Financial Times. He posted this yesterday. He said there are now 5861 COVID patients in London's hospitals, up now almost 700 more than the worst point in April. There has also been a clear inflection point in deaths, which have climbed to almost 100 per day, last seen in April. And he also said, this was yesterday, the trend in test positivity rate in the UK since Christmas is genuinely scary, with lines climbing almost vertically in all English regions. On Christmas Eve, 17% of tests in London came back positive. 4 days later, that was 24% and accelerating. And this is believed to be due to the new strain. And you can see these are different regions: Southwest, Southeast, East, London, Midlands, Northwest, and recently they're all going up. Percent of test positive is just going up. And again, that's believed to be new strain. I saw something else too I wanted to show you. Where is it here? Charlie Haynes, who's with BBC News, said a doctor pal of mine just sent me this from their shift this is an emergency room in East London. He posted this like a couple hours ago, 6:01 p.m. First patient in emergency room this evening, middle-aged man, horrible COVID, caught it off his asymptomatic grandson who gave it to the whole family. This doctor says, why are they reopening schools now in the UK? Emergency room is a blank storm. I'm seeing a lot of bad reports from UK hospitals. Here, one of our viewers mentioned Nightingale. Look, Daily Mail says London's Nightingale Hospital at the Excel will have just 300 of its 4,000 beds in use when it reopens next week. London's NHS Nightingale Hospital will have just 300 beds for treating patients, a fraction of the 4,000 available in March when it reopens next week. Mail Online can reveal, blah, 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 blah. Those 7 hospitals were left largely unused despite 220 pounds of taxpayer money being pumped into them. Before. Hold on, I'll show you this too. Here. UK prepares emergency Nightingale Corona hospitals and closes London primary schools. This is from yesterday. Britain has reactivated emergency hospitals built at the start of the pandemic. The announcement came just days after the Royal London Hospital told staff in an email it was now in disaster medicine mode and unable to provide high-standard critical care. With London, one of the worst areas worst hit by the new virus variant, which is up to 70% more infectious, the government decided to close all London primary schools, reversing a decision made just 2 days ago. The Royal College of... So this says... the temporary Nightingale hospitals at locations such as convention centers were one success built by the military in a matter of days. They were barely used but have remained on standby, and now they're going to start getting used more. And it says the Royal College of Nursing warned, however, that the country did not have enough nurses to staff the new sites, especially with so many nurses sick or the virus, with the virus or forced to isolate. So it's just, I mean, I'm pointing this out just because I think it's important news about what's going on in the UK. But again, I just think this is likely to happen in other countries as this new strain. I don't see why this wouldn't happen in the US. I don't see, why would it not happen? The new strain is in the US. It's here. I assume it's going to be spreading, and I assume you're going to see an increase in transmission in the US from the new strain. So, you know, I'm covering it on the one hand because I think it's important what's going on here, but on the other hand, I think it's, this strain is spreading around the world and it's already in the US. Meredith Bell thinks it's bound to happen. I just don't, I mean, it just seems like that's the most reasonable conclusion, is that it's going to get a lot worse in the US. Polly says we don't have the staff to run them. I think she's thinking of talking about the Nightingale hospitals. Karen Brody says there are not enough staff to run the Nightingales. Here, the Independent has this. Military reserves will help staff London Nightingale Hospital. Lack of staff, particularly nurses, was one of the reasons why the Nightingale was poorly used during the first wave of the virus, treating only 54 patients in total. Lack of staff is also a reason why London's hospitals have struggled to open up enough so-called surge capacity. Staffing ratios have already been stretched, and NHS England has urged staff to work extra shifts over the next 3 weeks. That's from the Independent. Dave N.W. says some people have been speculating the new strain has been in the U.S. since October and has already spiked. I haven't seen that. It's not clear how long it's been here for, but All I can tell you is when the federal government is considering giving people half doses of the vaccine, that tells me they're very, very worried. Let me know your thoughts at Lookner on Twitter. Rick Hoppy says, it's bad here in Southern California. Our ICUs are at capacity. Yeah, I think it's been like that for like a week or something in Southern California. I mean, this is from December 17th, but I saw numbers a couple days ago that still had the ICU capacity at 0, I believe, in Southern California. Juniper says, there's already an EMS shortage in these states. My father is a 911 dispatcher in rural CNY just this week. They had 4 tones for a woman whose track fallout and couldn't breathe. So, I can't confirm this from Juniper, but, there's certainly, thank you, Juniper, for writing in. But, the overall point is that if more people are being treated for COVID and have to go to the hospital and have to go to ambulances, that's just going to put a strain on the whole healthcare system. Even people who don't have COVID and need other need other attention and other treatment. I was going to read that, but got deleted. Oh, I hadn't seen this yet today. Jennifer Tower sent me this. Sumya, who's with the LA Times, says a worrying trend, an increasing percentage of people dying from COVID in LA County don't have underlying conditions. Earlier in the pandemic, about 92% of people who died had pre-existing health conditions. That number has now dropped to about 86%, officials say. Somebody in the comments, this person, My Empathy, no, it's this person, Martin Prakash. Yeah, I mean, he's wondering, is this because maybe, one reason for this is that there's various reasons for this. One reason could be is that they're just better at treating the people with pre-existing conditions, right? That doesn't mean, one explanation for this is that it's becoming worse for people who are healthy with no pre-existing conditions. Another reason would be if they were just more successful at keeping people with pre-existing conditions alive. So I don't know. It's not good. She's really good to follow for LA County stuff. She's been doing great reporting, Sumya. Yeah, here's the ICU capacity, see? Current available ICU capacity by region. San Joaquin Valley, 0. Southern California, 0. That's from today. That's from Sumya. Stuart Paul Newby says, hopefully if the virus mutation happens again, it might become weaker at hurting us. I hope so. Yeah, I mean, it would be great if the new variant, the new strain being seen prominently in the UK was less harmful to people, but that's not the evidence I'm seeing. The experts are saying that there's basically no difference, significant difference in its harmfulness level, but it spreads faster. Misty Blue says, I'm never going to get my surgeries done now. Well, that's another thing that happens. If too much of the hospital resources are being devoted to people with COVID, people with other surgeries can have their surgeries canceled or delayed. Dogs, Cats Rules says, elective surgeries are how hospitals make money. Without those, they lose money. We are bringing you live coverage here. You are watching the live news roundup, latest headlines. We're taking your comments and questions on the air at Lookner on Twitter. And I do want to again thank our moderators. They're awesome. They're all volunteers. Mark Helton is there. Thank you, Mark. In our YouTube chat right now, Linda Belk and Misha in our Periscope chat. Thank you for moderating there. Roxanne Becky in our Facebook chat. Shaft ZX says, our work canceled elective surgeries. Janet says, I need a knee replacement, but I had to have mine canceled. April Coco says, screening colonoscopies are hard to get, mammograms delayed. Skinny Survivors moderating in Twitch. Cam says, spreads faster and virus load is higher from the new variant. I think I've read something about that. I'm not sure. In the U.S. today, by the way, so the reporting COVID tracking project, which is, I think, the most reliable site in terms of numbers, they say holiday data reporting effects are almost certainly still at play. So 205,000 new cases, 125,000 people hospitalized, 1,431 deaths. But they say like a bunch of states didn't actually report today. They said today at published time we had no updates from 7 of the 56 states and territories we track. 7 additional states did not report current hospitalizations. So there's, we're still dealing, it's still close to New Year's. It's a Sunday, probably reporting will be back to normal next couple of days. Oh, there's another interesting thing I saw I wanted to talk about, which doesn't have to do with the virus. But so I saw this, which was interesting. Ford Fisher posted this. So, on January 6th, there's supposed to be protests in D.C. I guess people protesting the result of the election, of which there's no evidence whatsoever that there was any significant fraud or wrongdoing involving the election. But a bunch of people are going out to protest anyway. But anyways, this was interesting to me. That D.C. says no guns allowed during election protest, not even concealed carry. So Ford Fisher says, in other words, effective at midnight tonight, concealed carry, where you have a gun on you but it's not out in the open, people can't see it. Even concealed carry will be illegal even for D.C. permit holders in nearly all of downtown until Friday. The protest is scheduled for Thursday with an anticipated prequel rally Wednesday afternoon. So if you look at this, it says Fox 5 D.C. D.C. says no guns allowed, not even like concealed weapons. DC police are posting notices prohibiting guns downtown ahead of the pro-Trump rally set for Wednesday. The protest coincides with the day Congress is meeting to certify the presidential election results. A Fox journalist took this picture. All firearms prohibited within 1,000 feet of this sign. So I guess, yeah, the way Ford Fisher understands it, Ford Fisher is interpreting it. I mean, he covers a lot of protests, so I think he's a reliable source. I mean, maybe we'll hear otherwise, but I mean, he covers a lot of these things in person. His understanding is that it means even concealed carry will be illegal for DC permit holders because it says all firearms are prohibited, see, on the sign. I hear Cricket says, good, that's to prevent disagreements from turning deadly. But yeah, I'm hoping there's not violence on Wednesday. See, Michelle Sparks says a couple weeks ago there was some stabbings and a lot of fights. All right, hang on a second here. Hey, thanks for the Facebook stars. I really appreciate it. Tony Rayner, thank you, Tony. Damian Cohn, Kevin Stevenson, Star Fowler, thank you, Star, Kathleen Roney, and Marie Dale Concordia. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate your support. Your donations are what allows me to do this. Most of you know this, but I basically do this full time. So I'm like kind of available full time to cover news, breaking news when it happens. But you guys are the ones who allow me to do that. So thank you for all your support for the channel and the channels. And if you want to make a donation, you go to agendafree.tv, agendafree.tv. But thank you. Okay, so I'm getting to some of more of your comments here. Oh, Mark Worling told me that Scott Gottlieb posted about the new strain today. Let's see. I didn't see that. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, Scott Gottlieb, who is the former FDA commissioner, you can see Shani Ben Ezra says, Scott Gottlieb said, we're not vaccinating quickly enough to create a backstop against this new variant. He warns the new variant, which was being seen a lot in the UK, will account for a majority of infections by March. The key to control this variant is to control the epidemic, he tells Marg Brennan. He's talking about the U.S. Thank you, Mark, for writing in. Thank you also for your support. North Hank Spin, who liked him, he says he and his wife and I really enjoyed your New Year's broadcast. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. Happy New Year. Thanks for all your hard work keeping up on the headlines. Hey, thanks for your support. Much appreciated. Thank you, North Hankspin, and your wife. Here's another thing about guns. I told you how DC is banning guns, apparently even concealed carry, in a lot of downtown during the protest day, on January 6th. Garrett Hack says DC's mayor reminds folks who live in DC to stay out of downtown Tuesday and Wednesday due to the expected protests, and reminds folks who don't live here not to bring their guns into the district. Mayor Muriel Bowser says, I am asking Washingtonians and those who live in the region to stay out of the downtown area on Tuesday and Wednesday and not to engage with demonstrators who come to our city seeking confrontation, and we will do what we must to ensure all who attend remain peaceful. And it says, federal district law, DC law prohibits anyone from carrying a firearm within 1,000 feet of any First Amendment activity. Under federal law, it is illegal to possess firearms on the U.S. Capitol grounds and on National Park Service areas such as Freedom Plaza, the Eclipse, and the National Mall. D.C. does not have reciprocity with other states' concealed pistol licenses. Unless a person has been issued a concealed pistol license by the District of Columbia, they cannot carry a firearm in the city. It is illegal to openly carry firearms in the district. So you shouldn't be seeing people walk around carrying guns openly because it's illegal there. Hey, thank you, Kangaroo Island TV from Australia. I really appreciate that. Kangaroo Island TV, thanks for your support. And also Linda Payne. Much appreciated. Thank you, Linda. I'm glad you are finding the coverage useful. Stephen Murray says people will still bring knives instead of guns. Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing with these protests on Wednesday, I guess maybe on Tuesday as well, is just, do anti-protesters show up, right? Because there's going to be a lot of protesters from the right. But what makes it, what really ups the risk for violence is if you get lots of people from the other side coming to protest against the protesters, right? So that's a whole, how much they show up is going to be a big deal too. Hey, thank you, Patrick Davis, by the way. Patrick says, I hope the protest doesn't help end in violence. Me too. I don't know what's going to happen. Devotee says, hopefully Antifa won't show up and cause trouble. I mean, it's just, the problem is you have people on both sides who are kind of always spoiling for a fight. And when they get together, you inevitably have conflict between them. So certainly we'll be keeping an eye on that. Okay. Oh, here's just another. We were talking before about, we started talking about this story, which I think is super important, where the U.S. federal government is considering giving people half doses of the Moderna vaccine I think that's because they're really concerned about the new UK strain going crazy in the US and just making things much worse as it's been doing in the UK. So we were talking about that, and then we were talking about how bad things being bad in the UK. So there was one other article I wanted to show you about the UK, which I had noted here about how it's affecting healthcare there, the new strain, especially London. This is a Telegraph article, Patients Left in Corridors as COVID Pressure Leaves ICUs Short of Space and Oxygen. Warning of rising crisis as desperate medics urge public to socially distance after pictures of revelers mixing on New Year's Eve. And again, I think it's an important story that this is going on in the UK and London on its own. But I also think it's important because this other strain, this UK strain, the strain that we're seeing in the UK go crazy, is also being detected in other countries as well. And I'm just assuming, I just think it's reasonable to expect, unfortunately, that it's going to start spreading a lot in the UK. We saw before Scott Gottlieb says in the US. Scott Gottlieb thinks it's going to be the dominant strain in the US by March. One nurse revealed that resources are so stretched that a patient ran out of oxygen as hospitals struggle to cope with the surge in infections. This is in London. The nurse who works at the Whittington Hospital in North London described patients being left in quarters, some spending up to 3 hours in ambulances because of lack of beds, and one being left without oxygen when their cylinder ran out. Speaking on condition of anonymity, the nurse said, "I'm worried about patient safety because if these little things are happening now when we're short and it's busy, it's only going to get worse. I don't know what else will happen. It worries me. It's not having enough nurses to care for patients. Patient safety is being affected. Some are in corridors, being looked after in makeshift areas. Makeshift wards have been created for COVID patients, and ICUs are running out of space." The nurse described finding a COVID patient with several health conditions who had been left on an oxygen cylinder after it had run out. He thought he was receiving oxygen, but the whole cylinder had run out. Because of staff shortages and because the nurses are tired, no one had checked on him, the nurse said. He was in a room with an oxygen port on the wall, but he was left on a cylinder and no one had gone back to check on him. So it's just, again, it's getting much worse in the healthcare system there, and a real strain is being put in the healthcare system. And I unfortunately believe that you're going to see more of this in the U.S. Karen Brody says they froze nurses' wages, though thousands left. I haven't heard about that. I'm not saying it's not true. I just haven't heard about it. Miss Sal says the Whittingham is not the best hospital in the first place. History Underfoot says, best cure is prevention. Do what you can to slow the spread. Now, Jennifer Towers sent me this. This is what Peter Hotez, who is a healthcare expert, says. Now, he's talking about going to a single dose, but how about half doses? The UK, again, is talking about planning on delaying people's second dose and giving as many people as the first dose as possible, but you don't get the second dose as fast as you're supposed to. We're also hearing in the U.S. that the government is proposing giving people half doses. Now, he says going to a single dose. I think he means when he says going to a single dose, he might mean going to giving you a half dose and then a half dose. Or, somebody didn't, I think maybe he didn't understand. This person just here. So again, I'm not sure that he might have just meant to say giving people 2 half doses, he says, would undermine the last remaining credibility of Operation Warp Speed. If you look at the published data, it's only 2 doses for both mRNA vaccines that provide reasonable virus neutralizing antibodies, and it's only 2 doses that protect. Asking the American people to compromise their safety and protection because no one thought we needed a health system to provide high throughput vaccinations is unacceptable. We have to stop being so mediocre and do hard things. Yeah, he says 2 full doses, not 2 half doses. The problem is not vaccine production, or at least not in a few weeks. The problem is no one bothered to do the calculations to know what it takes to vaccinate the American people. So figure it out, open football stadiums, approve adeno vaccines, get ours into U.S., and stop with the mediocre, half-baked post hoc analyses. Basically, what he's saying is that this whole thing should be better done. That's his basic criticism. Is he does not think that the proper amount of government effort is being put into this, and it's not being done well. All right, give me a shout with your comments at Lookner on Twitter. Jeff Haas says, I agree with him. I'm sick of this clown show operation. Look, I can't tell you, as I said before, I've read some articles about why it's going so slowly in the U.S., and I've seen a bunch of different, things cited. I will say this, though. You see this stuff. I posted this yesterday, which is just, for whatever reason, this is just unacceptable. So in Florida, there has been long lines of seniors being forced to wait for first come, first serve vaccines for hours, seniors. Similar photos from Tennessee. Look. Long line for COVID vaccine in Colombia. Vaccine reportedly runs out. This is from Fox 17. And it shows a lot of seniors, among other people, being forced to stand in line for hours. Hundreds of eligible Colombia residents stood in line for hours to receive the corona vaccine. People, the first come, first serve event is being held at this community college. There were apparently long lines before 8 a.m. when it opened. People were reportedly being turned away around 10 a.m. The Columbia mayor tweeted his disappointment, saying the state didn't do his part. He said, this is the Columbia mayor. I am disappointed to hear that vaccines ran out this morning in under 2 hours. Dozens and dozens of some of our most vulnerable citizens stood in line and made arrangements to do their part today, but the state didn't do its part. So you just have older people being forced to stand in line for hours. It's just amazing. I mean, look at this. You have people with walkers and stuff. And I don't know who to blame. It's unacceptable and it's disgraceful. It's happening in multiple states. I mean, look at this. How can this be the best we can do is for seniors to stand in line here in the cold for hours next to each other? In close quarter, they're not even social distancing. I mean, look, this guy's in like a sitting device, probably because he can't stand. You know? That's 2 states. I've seen it in Florida and I've seen it in Tennessee. Look, seniors in Florida camp overnight to get vaccine, but this is multiple states now. So again, I can't, tell you what happened in a particular place and why it's happening there, but, it's multiple states. I hear Cricket says those people shouldn't have to stand that shameful. It's not just one place. You'd think they'd at least put out chairs for them. Cell Game says, how cold is it there? The people could get sick right there. Linda Payne says, I couldn't do that. My walker has a chair. I can only stand for about up to 1 minute. Linda Belk says, that's ridiculous. She says, people have been scared into thinking they have to have it now. So, well, it's better to have it sooner than later. But, how can it just, again, it's not just one place. That's I just showed you 2 different states. So it's just, something has just gone wrong. It's not an isolated incident. Something has just gone fundamentally wrong if that's happening. There's just, whatever the reasoning is, something has gone very, very wrong. Linda says, logistics of giving millions of doses to millions of people with small staff, that's why. Again, in those particular areas, different counties are doing it different ways. I can't speak to those individual counties, but something has gone wrong. Katrina Jones says, my elderly mom couldn't endure that. Ridiculous. I feel so bad for the people who are waiting out there. Elizabeth G. says, most counties in Florida are doing it by appointment. Now, I'm not saying that's happening everywhere, but it's happening in multiple states. And clearly the vaccine rollout is going much slower than was hoped for. Here's another article. This is from local10.com. Florida, day 1 of COVID vaccine rollout in Broward County, less than smooth sailing. Don't bother calling the Florida Department of Health in Broward County to make an appointment if you're eligible for vaccine. Word is you must make the appointment online. That's a difficult feat considering the website has been down for more often than it has been working. Many people said they have been trying for 2 weeks to get an appointment. Now, this is day 1. This was day 1, so, maybe they'll improve things. NPR, COVID cases surge in U.S. as vaccinations fall below government predictions. Over 350,000 people have now died in the U.S. from the virus. More than 4.2 million people have received the initial vaccination dose as of Saturday. That number is far below the government's goal of having 20 million people vaccinated by the end of December. J Killer says, don't they have an expiration date? I'm sure some are expiring before being given. I don't know. There is some sort of expiration thing. I don't know if it's like after they're thawed from super cold temperatures, if they then expire. I don't know the exact deal on all that. I've seen stories about like they have vaccine left over and they got to give it to somebody. But I don't know if that, like how quickly it expires if it's just being kept super cold. But you certainly, I mean, it's again, it's like you look at some places, like Israel has been doing a much better job. I mean, they've been doing the best job of anybody. But like they're building like vaccination centers and stuff. Israel vaccinates more than 10% of its population in 2 weeks. Wall Street Journal. The small country with roughly 9 million people, about the same as New York City, now aims to immunize the majority of its population by early spring. It is a smaller country. Here's Financial Times. Israel sets pace with COVID vaccination overdrive. Healthcare sector praises government's flexible approach to rollout of jab. More than a tenth of Israelis have gotten the first dose. Encouraged by the Prime Minister, Netanyahu, competing health maintenance providers, or HMOs, have set up vaccination centers in stadiums, parking lots, school playgrounds, and in one case, a mobile clinic that drives to remote locations. The government even improved a drive-in clinic, the first one in the world. At one vaccination site, people waited no longer than 10 minutes each to be able to receive a jab, with 1 of 10 booths being kept empty to handle overflows. So, you know. They're so far leading the world in percentage of people vaccinated, by far. Hey, thank you, Sonic, for your support. Thank you so much, Sonic. And thank you also to Starfire3. Thank you. Misty Blue says one is good 5 days and the other 30 once thawed. Vaccine. Cheryl Simpson says drive-in clinic is great idea. Here, this is something about the expiration. How long does it take for Pfizer's and Moderna's COVID vaccines to expire? Both can last up to 6 months frozen. Once thawed, Pfizer's can be kept in a fridge for 5 days and Moderna's for 30 days. There you go. That's from KGW8. Misty Blue, you were right. Hey, thank you, McNeo, for your support. McNeo says, why is the federal government proposing doing half doses of Moderna vaccine, but not half of Pfizer's? It's a good question. My guess would be is that there's some limited data. It's not a lot of data. There's some limited data about half doses of Moderna. Maybe there's not even limited data about Pfizer. That's just a guess. I don't know. My guess would be it's because of the data they have access to. That's just my guess, but I don't know. It's a perfectly good question. Kimberly Barr says, what's going on in countries like India? Doesn't seem like we're getting much info. India just approved their first couple of vaccines. I read an article about that. So, hang on a second here. Seize the Day says Ontario was called out for pausing vaccinations on holidays. I saw something about this also, I think in the US. I forget, somebody posted something about this, about it not being 24 hours a day in the US. Who was it? I think it was like a New York City council member who was critical of, in the US, pausing for holidays and stuff, vaccinating people. Let's see if I can find that for you. Hang on. I don't know if I can find it. Anyways, you can see here, this is from The Guardian. We got it wrong. Ontario apologizes for pausing vaccinations during holidays. Canada's worst hit province shortened hours of vaccination clinics as frustrations mount across country over slow rollout of the drug. That's in Canada. The head of Ontario's COVID task force, this is from The Guardian, the head of Ontario's COVID task force apologized for pausing vaccinations during the Christmas holidays. We shouldn't have made that decision. I take responsibility for that, he said. Canada's rates of vaccination lag behind other countries that have approved the vaccines. The U.S. has Britain and Bahrain have all vaccinated residents at a higher rate than Canada. Canada's efforts have been hampered by the requirements of deep cold storage for the Pfizer vaccine, as well as poorly executed vaccination programs in some of the provinces. Yeah, but I saw somebody making this criticism about the U.S. too, and somebody saying, I think it was a member of the New York City Council saying, like, why is this not 24 hours a day? Where is the urgency here? Cheryl Simpson says, yes, in Ontario they are upset. Yeah, I mean, what I don't understand, like, I don't understand, in the U.S., like, I feel like, I mean, there's only so much vaccine to go around, but I feel like it should be the biggest deal in the world that should be what we should be hearing about more than anything, is getting people vaccinated. Montpelier says, USA not taking serious, taking days off, etc. Warp speed is now walk slowly speed. Lynn says, doesn't help you have a president focused elsewhere. Misty Blue says they started here and closed for the holidays, like, come on. I didn't realize that they had even slower rate of vaccination there than the U.S. Terry Stacy says they should have a 24-hour day operation. This is desperately getting out of control, even more than I thought it could. Yeah, I certainly think, I don't know, to me there should be 24 hours a day vaccination going on, if that would help things. Christina Scholl says each dose of Pfizer's contains 30 micrograms of vaccine. Moderna went through a much larger dose of vaccine, 100 micrograms. So Christina is saying maybe like the reason that the U.S. federal government is proposing giving half doses of Moderna vaccine instead of Pfizer vaccine is that Moderna has like a bigger dose. I'm not sure about that. That's an interesting thought. That's what Christina said. I'm not sure. Neither of the articles I read, I think, said why that was the case, why they were only proposing it for Moderna. Sydney, J.M. Lisa says this is a national emergency and required a national response. Jan Harker says 24-hour plans require staffing. That is a problem. Look, so I was telling you before, talking about articles I've read about the U.S. vaccine rollout and reasons why. I mean, I've read articles about the UK rollout, and I've just seen all these different reasons cited, and among those is staffing, that you have to train a lot of people and hire a lot of people to do this. So yes. And also find facilities to do it. I just don't get the sense. I mean, it's hard, I just don't get the sense that this is being prioritized as like the emergency wartime, in a sense, measure that it actually is to me. It's just a general sense. But I mean, the numbers kind of seem to bear that out. All right, let's talk for a second about, I haven't really talked about it yet. Oh, well, a couple things. So this week we have coming up, today's the 3rd. So on the 5th we have the election coming up. We have the runoff election in Georgia in the U.S., where 2 Senate seats are up for grabs, and if the Democrats win them both, they'll have control of the Senate. If not, Republicans will keep control of the Senate. So that's happening. We will be covering that on Tuesday. I'm going to be doing coverage on Agenda Free TV on Tuesday of that. I guess President Trump's supposed to do a rally tomorrow there. With the election, I have no idea what's going to happen in the election. I mean, I think it'll be close. I think the state's a pretty evenly divided state. But the thing I really can't tell is the people who are just like diehard Trump supporters, are they going to care as much about voting for the Senate when Trump is not running, especially when Trump has spent the last couple months claiming falsely, but claiming that the Georgia election was fraud, was fixed, and that he actually won Georgia, and just railing against all of the Republican leaders in Georgia. Like, will there be people who support Trump who, because he's not running and because he's been critical of the Georgia electoral process, will there be people in Georgia who just stay home and don't vote? That's what I'm wondering. Because it's so close in Georgia, I think that could make if that happens to a small degree, it could make a big difference. And I think that could be the determining factor. But I don't know what's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised to see either the Republicans or the Democrats win. I think it'll be close, but that's, to me, a huge unknown. More Republicans tend to vote more the day of. Democrats tend to vote more early. So if you're Republicans, you're hoping for a big day of turnout in Georgia. And I just don't know how all of the stuff with President Trump, that he's not on the ticket. He's not on the ticket. I mean, he's going to do a rally there, I think, tomorrow, but he's not on the ticket. And B, his criticism of the electoral process, even though it's unfounded, it's still criticism. So, and I'm guessing a lot of people who support him believe what he says. So that's the big unknown to me. That's my take, is that's the big unknown. And I'm not surprised if either side wins it, but I don't know to what degree his not being on the ticket and also his being critical of the electoral process will keep people, his supporters, who would be expected to vote Republican, home. I don't know. Maybe you have thoughts on that. Linda says it is more important to keep the Senate now. I don't have a good sense as to what, the die-hard Trump supporters in Georgia will do. Jeff thinks that Perdue and Warnock will win, so he thinks it'll be 1-1. That could happen as well. Nicole Wilson says, I think the phone call changes some minds. It's an interesting question if the phone call will have any effect on anything. Now, the phone call involves Georgia. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the phone call. I haven't spent a lot of time talking about it today. I haven't spent really any time talking about it today because it's been covered a million other places. So whatever. In case you didn't hear about it, basically, really briefly, yesterday, President Trump spent an hour calling the Georgia Secretary of State, basically trying to get the Georgia Secretary of State to change the vote total, to change the reported vote totals in Georgia and say Trump won. I mean, that's basically the idea of what happened. So, and there's clips of this out there. You can listen, literally the entire recording of the call is at the Washington Post. You can go listen to it there. I'm not going to spend all day talking about this. It's being covered lots of other places. I'm not surprised that it happened. I am surprised that it happened yesterday, right? When I first heard the story, I thought this happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but it happened yesterday. Like, this was like an hour of the president's day yesterday. But anyways, it's a good question that Nicole Wilson raises of, does this have any effect on the race in Georgia? And look, a lot of people in Georgia know how they're going to vote, but the Georgia election might be very, very, very close. The Senate election on Tuesday. So a little thing could be the difference. So, and this will be probably a huge story in Georgia, right? Because it's Trump calling the Georgia Secretary of State. I can't tell you if this has an effect, but it's a good question. Another question about this I have is that will this affect? There's a bunch of Republican members of Congress who are going on January 6th is when Congress formally certifies the Electoral College voting results, right? And it's normally just a formality, but a bunch of Republicans in Congress are planning on, objecting to the Electoral College vote even though there's been no evidence whatsoever produced of any kind of significant fraud. But they're going to do it anyway, so that's that. But I wonder, will any Republicans who were planning on objecting to the Electoral College vote, will this make them not want to do it? My guess is no, but I didn't know if that would happen. I don't know if that changes any minds about people. Like, do you want to bother doing that now that this call came out? And just in sum, the call is just, President Trump literally talks about, he literally says, I want you to find the votes. And he brings up all these conspiracy theories about the election, which have been debunked, and blah, blah, blah. But anyways, so I don't know if this changes anything about Wednesday, but it's a very interesting question about whether this changes anything about whether this will have an effect on the election Tuesday. I don't know in Georgia. But this comes out 2 days before the election day. A lot of people have voted early. A lot of people I think about 3 million people have voted early in Georgia. But there's still plenty of people who are going to go vote on election day. C. Michelle Sparks says, will it change anything? No. Should it? Yes. Chetzar says nothing will change Trump supporters' minds. At this point, you might have everybody just kind of locked into where they are. Yeah, and no one really changes their minds. But it's not just, in terms of the effects on the election on Tuesday, it's not just about changing people's minds. If it affects turnout, even if it doesn't change anybody's mind about whether they're going to vote Republican or Democrat in Georgia, who they prefer, it might affect turnout, whether somebody actually goes to the polls. Hey, thank you, Lulu, for your support. I appreciate that, Lulu. Thank you. Oh, also another thing that happened in this call, which was kind of strange. If you missed it, at one point, President Trump seemed to suggest that the Georgia Secretary of State would be committing some sort of crime if he didn't adjust the vote totals, and President Trump seemed to kind of be threatening him. But like it says, in a phone call on Saturday, President Trump threatened vague legal consequences. So again, I don't want to get into all this. I really don't want to spend the time covering it. But if you literally the entire transcript and the entire call, the audio from the entire call is posted on the Washington Post. You can go listen to the entire call and you can read. They have the whole transcript. See, read the full transcript. It's all here. So you can read the whole thing. So it's all there for you if you want to read it. Luis thinks Trump supporters are going to have record turnout on Tuesday. Ugh, Dr. Memes, enough. Enough, Dr. Memes. History Underfoot says, it was not kind of a threat, it was a threat. Linda, I think, from everything I've read from Georgia, it's assumed that more Democrats voted early. That's to be expected. And then Republicans vote more on election day. But so the general wisdom is that, can Republicans catch up enough on election day? There's also an interesting thing about this call that I noticed. I actually looked at it myself when I first saw the transcript. So if you look at the transcript, the call starts and Mark Meadows talks for just a little bit. And then President Trump, this is all President Trump. He talks for over 12 minutes nonstop. That's basically the start of the call is President Trump talking for 12 minutes nonstop. And then at the end of that, Mark Meadows says, "So, Mr. President, if I might be able to jump in and I'll give Brad a chance." So I thought that was interesting. Like literally the start of the call is President Trump talking 12 minutes nonstop. I actually timed it out in the audio clip. And then Meadows jumps in and says, so if I might be able to jump in and I'll give Brad a chance. But see, this is the kind of thing that makes me, we've been talking mostly about the virus today, because I think that's more important than this right now. But I will say this. I do think that whatever you think of Trump and Biden, it's possible that when Biden takes office, you will see like a very different federal response. You're not hearing. It's not like you see Biden making big speeches saying we're going to make all these, that I'm aware of, like huge changes to the response, right? But I don't think that doesn't really benefit him to do that now anyway. But I do think that the federal government response to the vaccine, which has basically been utterly hands-off under Trump for the most part. I mean, they've done some stuff, but at least publicly hands-off. Hands-off in a lot of important ways, and very little overall done, like with testing and stuff like this stuff. That could really shift, like quickly. So I would not be surprised if that happened. We'll have to see. I'm very interested in seeing like what happens with the vaccination stuff. If you see like a lot more, resources. And money, personnel, and stuff being put into vaccination effort and testing. Like I think it could be very different. I think it could be very different. We'll just have to see. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. But I wouldn't assume that just because Joe Biden is not sitting every day making speeches about how different it's going to be, that it's not going to be different. I think he might just figure, I'm not going to talk about it at length until I actually become president. But I think it could be very different. So that's one thing I'll be looking for. Hey, thank you, Laurel, for your support. I appreciate that, Laurel. Thank you. Amber says, my state has plenty of tests and more vaccinations than people who want them. Well, I don't know the specifics on each state, but there's plenty of people who are refusing to take it. That is true. Ted Bell says, how will he force the states to do anything different? Well, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, for example, like putting more federal resources into things, getting more money to states, maybe building centers that haven't been built, putting personnel towards it. We'll just have to see. But again, I would not be surprised. Casual Genius says agenda free, because apparently something I just said had an agenda, right? Something I just said had an agenda. Here you go. I'm sure Casual Genius can't tell me what agenda I had. Remember, agenda free is not opinion free. It's two different things. So you might want to look up the word agenda. Ooh, where's my phone here? Hang on. Hang on. Oh yeah, they did the thing. They did the thing again with YouTube. I think YouTube did that thing again where it's just crazy. Where YouTube will do this thing where like they have an automated censor bot. They have an automated censor bot that like automatically hides streams from. They did it. It automatically hides streams that the censor bot thinks is violating YouTube rules, right? Which are, it's just broken. It's been broken for months and months and months, and all kinds of harmless live streams get hidden. And when they get hidden, they don't come up in search, and they don't appear in people's subscriber feeds. So yeah, so now it happened again, and it keeps happening. So I don't think we're going to go on that long in the stream. If I did, I would just restart the broadcast on YouTube. But I don't think we're going to be on much longer. But it is just, I mean, it's just terrible. It's just, they just don't fix the system. And it happens to all kinds of people all the time, and they just refuse to fix it. But I mean, I don't think we're going on that much longer tonight anyway. So if we were, I would just post it again. But this is what happens. It's just amazing. They refuse to fix it. Yeah, it's happening with all kinds of live streams. So I'll take a few more comments here. Yeah, Rick says you're not the only live stream it happens to. It happens to all kinds of live streams. It's just like a broken live stream system, and they just refuse to fix it. And there's nothing you can do about it. Diana says, I can't believe I heard a rally is happening. Yeah, there is going to be a President Trump rally in Georgia tomorrow. Trump fumes at Georgia Republicans ahead of his runoff rally. Let me see if I can find the, hold on. Where is the, there's a site where they list the Trump events. Events. Here it is. Monday, January 4th, 9 p.m., Dalton, Georgia. A victory rally featuring President Trump, Senator Perdue, and Senator Loeffler. I don't know if Senator Perdue is going to be there because I think he's isolating because he had a close contact, I believe, test positive. I don't know if Perdue will be there. Okay. So that's going on tomorrow, and then Tuesday is the runoff election. We'll cover the runoff election here. And then Wednesday, what's going on is you have the U.S. Congress is going to approve or certify the Electoral College vote, which normally is a formality, but it's not going to be because some Republicans are going to object. And at the same time that's going on, you're supposed to have like some big pro-Trump protest in D.C. on Wednesday. So that's going on too. All of that is happening this week. Yeah, as Darth Tater says, this is all for show by the GOP. Nothing they can do can stop Biden from becoming the president. Well, yeah, so he will become president. That's going to happen. Smedley likes the format. Thank you for liking the format. Let's see here. I think some that there were a couple of Democrats who objected in like 2005. This was 2005. This is a CNN article. The normally perfunctory ceremony was delayed for about 4 hours in 2005 as Democrats unsuccessfully challenged Ohio's votes for Bush. And then, so that happened in 2005. The move was not designed to overturn Bush's reelection, said several Democrats who filed the objection. The Democrats said they wanted to draw attention to the need for aggressive election reform in wake of what they said were widespread voter problems. So they weren't, I don't think they were, they were highlighting what they thought were problems with the voting process, it looks like. But I don't think that those Democrats were not, so they did object, but they were not, saying that the wrong person won that Bush shouldn't have won the election. I don't believe. But that did happen in 2005. I don't believe that in 2005 it was the second such challenge since the current rules were established in 1877. And I don't think it's happened since then. I think 2005 was the last time. Yeah, see, this was from LA Times in 2005. The protests lodged by Boxer and Representative Stephanie Tubbs Jones. Boxer said her purpose was not to overturn Bush's reelection, but to focus new attention on flawed voting practices. That's not going to be the case this year. You're going to have people claiming that there was some kind of big fraud, possibly big fraud, when there's been no evidence of that. But yeah, that was done in 2005 by some Democrats. Sama says, did they object in 2016? I don't think they did. Oh, I think maybe the difference in 2005 is that to actually stop the process, you need a House member and a Senate member to both object. It looks like that happened in 2005. Maybe in 2016, 17, it didn't happen. So this is an article, Biden to Democrats objecting to Electoral College results, it's over. That was in 2017, 4 years ago. More than a half dozen members rose at different points to object to results of the election. This was in 2017. But they didn't. I don't think any senators stopped. I don't think they actually stopped the process in 2017, because you have to have a House member and a senator object to stop the process and go to debate. I saw something about this. This is how it'll work on Wednesday. Nancy Pelosi actually sent out a letter explaining the process. This is a letter from Nancy Pelosi. It says, the vice president will preside over a joint session and calls the roll of states. The tellers announce the result of each state alphabetically, the Electoral College result. There is no other discussion in the joint session. if a written objection is lodged by a member of the House and the Senate, if a member of both the House and the Senate objects to the Electoral College results, then we meet in our individual chambers for up to 2 hours of debate. Only then will members be recognized to speak on the floor. Unless both the House and the Senate vote to reject the electoral count for the state in question, the objection is rejected. We then reconvene and proceed to the next state in the roll call. So for every state, they have to see if somebody objects. And if for a given state, as they announce its electoral votes, a House member and a Senate member object, then they each go off to their own chamber and debate it. And then they'll come back, and inevitably there won't be enough votes to reject it. Because unless both the House and Senate vote to reject the electoral count for a state, the objection is rejected. So the House is controlled by Democrats, and I would be surprised if, and I don't think there's enough votes in the Senate either. But what you could have is a bunch of delays on Wednesday, because every time a House and Senate member objects to a state, then they have to take a break and go discuss it. She says, at the end of the day, which could be the middle of the night, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be officially declared the next president and vice president of the United States. That's true. But you could have day and night, politics discussions, politicking going on in the House and Senate. Hey, thanks, Rosemary Hill, for your support. I really appreciate that, Rosemary. Thank you. Elizabeth G. says, all this nonsense is just political theater. John W. Harvey sent me this. We talked about the U.S. Numbers earlier today, but a little earlier here. But just notice that there's limited reporting, inconsistent data, and reduced testing due to holidays. BNO Newsroom. But the number of people in the hospital in the U.S. went up 1,900 since yesterday from COVID. Did I thank Laurel already? I think I did. Thank you, Laurel and Rosemary Hill, for your support. LP Lettuce, I don't know if I'm going to cover the inauguration. We'll have to see. Hey, thank you, T. Strom, for the Super Hearts. I appreciate that. Thank you. Daniel Boberson says, political theater when there are so many life and death issues they could be working on. The Nintendo Switchite says, the virus is spiking because people don't listen. The Nintendo Switchite also thinks it will be mayhem on January 6th. Yeah, on January 6th, while this is going on inside of Congress, you'll have these protests happening outside of Congress. The pro-Trump protest. Vetac versus the World says they dedicate more time to playing games and actually helping people of the country. If you want a cushy job that you aren't judged on whether you actually do anything constructive, become a senator or a House member. Nicolette G. says they're going to argue for a few hours and vote for Biden. Yeah, up to 2 hours per state, as Sama says. It's according to the Nancy Pelosi letter. They can discuss for up to 2 hours per state. right, let's see here. Let me just do a last check here. Is there anything else I wanted to mention? Let me just look really quick. Oh, I don't, we haven't really talked about it. I'm not going to really get into it right now. But there's this worry that possibly Iran will retaliate for the death of Soleimani. Look, 2 days ago, our U.S. and Iran ratchet up military activity as concerns increase ahead of Soleimani killing anniversary. That happened on what day was it? January 3rd. Well, that's today. It's today. Anyways, there's this concern. Last year, the U.S. assassinated the second most powerful person in Iran, General Soleimani, and there's a concern that there might be some kind of retaliation against the U.S. interests because of this around now. Today's the anniversary. So we'll have to see. I'll keep an eye on that. The drumbeat of veiled threats, public messaging, and military posturing has quickened in the days before the January 3rd anniversary. Well, a date that U.S. officials fear Iran may mark by striking back. Well, it is January 3rd today. January 3rd is almost over. But you never know when. I've heard experts say Iran could wait years to retaliate. Stephen Murray thinks Iran will retaliate. Killing Soleimani was a mistake. Jennifer Fair says, need to keep an eye on Iran. Misty Blue, we're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, in addition to Periscope. All right. Well, guys, I think... Oh, what is this? Roxanne says, I wonder how many hours they will be locked in that room. I think she's talking about Wednesday. I don't know how long. I don't know how many states the Republicans are going to object to and how long the discussions will be. Okay. Nicolette says, I remember a year ago you were covering the virus while the president was carrying out the attack. Well, we did cover the Soleimani. That both. I think they were we covering both at the same time? I can't remember. I can't remember if we were covering the virus by January 3rd of last year. It's possible we were covering both things. Hey, Kelly Grace, thanks for the Facebook stars, by the way. All right. Well, guys, I think we might have reached that time for the end of this broadcast. But we will certainly do more news coverage and be doing this more. So if there's big news tonight, big news like it's a single story, I can certainly come back on the air and cover it on Agenda Free TV. If you're not aware, if you're watching on YouTube, I have two news channels. On the rest of the platforms, it's one. On YouTube, there's Agenda Free TV 1 and 2. You're watching Agenda Free TV 2 right now. There's 2, but there's also Agenda Free TV 1. So subscribe to both of them. And make sure you click the notifications bell and choose all notifications. Hey, I really appreciate you guys tuning in for the news roundup. Thanks so much for watching today. And thanks so much for your participation. Lots of people have been letting me read your comments on the air and sending me news links. So news roundup's supposed to be interactive. So I really appreciate your participation and your thoughts and your questions. And any news stuff I see tonight, I'll also post on my Twitter account, @Lookner on Twitter. Follow me there, @Lookner on Twitter. Follow me for breaking news. And a huge thanks to our moderators. They are all volunteers, the mods. Give it up for the mods. They keep the chat troll free. They are such an important part of the channel. The moderators, we've had a bunch of mods in and out tonight. Sarah Joy is there right now. I know Mark Helton was there. Lynn G was there. Mark's there right now. So thank you to them. Linda Belk has been modding. Misha has been modding. Thanks to them. Roxanne Betke has been modding. Thank you, Roxanne. And we've had a bunch of Twitch mods too. That's awesome. Thank you, moderators. Skinny Survivor, I know, has been modding. And let's see. By the way, if you have any interest in being a volunteer moderator, we can always use more moderators. That'd be amazing. Just ask the mods for how you can find out more information. They will let you know. Oh, and thank you, Shaft ZX and Deb LaCour. Deb says, thanks for covering the phone call. Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't do, again, I think some people wanted me to do like a whole stream on the phone call. It's the kind of thing that was being covered so many other places so much, and at this point I would rather prefer covering, and we talked about it a bit, but I'd rather cover, I thought the stuff about like the half doses story, I thought was a huge story, which I hadn't really been seen being covered, so I chose to cover that instead. Thank you, Deb LaCour and Shaft ZX1, and also Daniel Boberson. Hey, thanks for your donations, and thanks to everybody who donated. That's really kind of you. That's literally how I can do my news coverage full time. Is you guys? You are the ones who make it possible. So thank you so much. Also, thanks for the super hearts, Tanya Strom, and everybody who gave Facebook stars: Kelly Grace, Rhonda Fall, Tony Rayner, Damian Cohn, Kevin Stevenson, Starfowler, Kathleen Roney, Marie Dale Concordia, thank you. And if you do want to donate to Agenda Free TV and Agenda Free TV 2, you can just go to agendafree.tv, agendafree.tv. But thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And we will do more news roundups. Louise says, yes, half doses was a huge story. Yeah, Joanna, well, I know about YouTube. In the last hour or so, they did or last probably half an hour, they did that thing where the dumb Autobot hides the broadcast. If we were going on longer, I would just restart the stream. But at this point, it's not really worth doing. So, but I am aware of it. Thank you, Charles Goki, for the sticker and your support. Thank you so much, Charles Goki, too. Okay, let's see here. Oh, the Discord. Don't forget about the Discord. The Discord is a chat room where people who watch my channels chat with each other when we're not on the air. Also, it's free, but if you sign up, you get really great notifications so you don't miss a live stream when we're coming on there to cover breaking news. So check out the Discord chat room, Agenda Free TV fans, Discord chat. You can find the link at the bottom of the YouTube video description for this broadcast, and also the mods can post that link as well. But check out the Discord chat. That's the best way to get notifications for my channels. And let me also do this real quick. That goes there. Sama says, if you covered the call, you have to cover the election fraud. Right, I did. I covered the election fraud. I said there's been no evidence whatsoever of any kind of significant fraud in the election. So I covered it. I just covered the election fraud. I did. I said that before. I completely covered it. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, and also a reminder, I also have a personal channel where I do some other broadcasts when we're not so busy covering news. That is called Lookner. That's only on YouTube. If you like non-news videos, You can subscribe to Lookner on YouTube. Starfire, thanks for your support in the sticker, Starfire. Next time. Thank you, Starfire. Yeah, we will do this again very soon. All right. We are wrapping this up. Hey, thanks again for tuning in. Frukartoffine, our Twitch viewers like Cable Car, Frukartoffine, Eddie Rux. MAA2469, Arctic Mule, Shaggy, Sim, Screamin' Cheese, Death Squad 1, the Nintendo Switch Lite, Decoy Octopus, and our other VTAC vs. the World and other Twitch viewers. Thanks for watching there. Thanks to our Facebook viewers. Duster Singer, Christian Montoya, Rita Pearl, Nicolette Geese, Sama Rondorland, Cassie Hossein, and Betty Nelson, and all of our Facebook viewers. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Chetzar, for the donation. That's very kind of you, Chetzar. Thank you, Chetzar. Much appreciated. Hey, thank you, Ol Raj, for watching. Toy Biederman, Gina Pina, June Cruz, Misty Blue, Shalom Revelator, Jake Jack, Squirt Reynolds, and our other Periscope viewers. Thanks for watching there. And Painted Sky. And thank you to our YouTube viewers, Sebi Paula Faust, Ann M. Margot, Darren Markley, Linda Payne, A. Grush, Sarah Blackwood, Mr. Speaker, Christian Montoya, Ann M. Rob the Slots, Nicole Fleury, Strange Reverend, Margot, April Coco, Jack Carr, Diana L., Baby Shark, VF Star, Miss Truth Seeker, Stuart Clark, C. Clark, Darren Markley, Linda Payne, C. Michelle Sparks, Charlotte Walker, Keita G. Did I say Cell Games? Buckdown, Smedley, Karen Brody, Madison G. Miss Sal, Seize the Day, Mark Warling, Tommy's Loves YouTube, Lynn Smith, Starfire, Jeff Haas says your virus coverage started January 17th, and everybody else on YouTube. Hang on a second here. All right. All right, folks, I'm wrapping it up. I am wrapping it up. Also, Going South and Mischief for watching. And Damian Hill. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in for the news roundup, and we will do this again soon. And if there's big news tonight, I will come on the air and cover it. All right, thanks for watching. We will see you soon with more live news coverage right here on Agenda Free TV and on YouTube on Agenda Free TV 2 as well.